So first step is to remove the stalk from the chili, which is very simple. It just usually snaps off if it's fresh like that. Our next step is really the most complicated of it all, and you'll see it's really not all that complicated. It's just to cut the chilies. You can decide yourself how round you want the slices, how thick you want the slices. We can go for ones quite thick like that, a little bit of texture, or maybe a little bit thinner, or sometimes a mix of thick and thin can be interesting as well. You see what comes out of the pickle jar. And then as we get down closer to the stalk, then we find the other side of the stalk to the tip, and we can cut that down to size and leave the tip there. So if you like, you can cut them all one by one like that, or if you're feeling a little pressed on time, you could take several together and cut them through like that. Again, being careful of the fingers, keeping the fingers back. And there we go, all nicely roughly chopped like that. As I say, you can go for finer, you can go for thicker. You don't even need to necessarily keep them in little round shapes. Some people at this stage, then what they like to do is shake out the seeds. So if you want to do that, you could put them in a colander and bounce it up and down, and the seeds will start to come out, and then you pluck out the actual chilies. Personally, I don't mind having the seeds in. They give it a little bit of an extra bite. Sometimes they fall out in the vinegar and they gather around the bottom of the jar, and that's fine. So our next step from here is to transfer all of these into our pickle jar. Simple way of doing that is then moving them first into a bowl. Like such. And then from the bowl, then much easier to get them into the jar than trying to pick them all up one by one off the board and into the jar. It makes the transfer process much easier. So there we go. So our next step involves vinegar. Here I'm using the best quality rice wine vinegar I can get. What I've done is I've levered off the cap so I can open it, and we can add that to our saucepan. So that's half a litre then I'm adding there, half a litre of rice wine vinegar. And then it involves a certain mastery of the element of fire, which luckily we've had a few thousand generations of experience with as human beings. And very conveniently just turning on the gas like that. So we can let that come to a simmer, or just straight away we can add in our sugar. So I'm not overly sugaring it. This is brown sugar, organic brown sugar apparently, according to the label anyway, and I'm just adding that in there then. And we can stir that gently, that'll dissolve in there. And we just wait for that to come to a simmer. And we're almost done. Covering anything will allow it to come to a boil a little quicker. I can hear that bubbling away in there. And there we go. That's starting to look good. And we don't really need it much hotter than that. That's good enough. So I'm turning off the fire at this stage. And then the next part of the process is adding the vinegar to the chilies. So you can see the nice green color of those chilies there at the moment. Now that's going to fade a little bit once we add in the vinegar. So we can add a small amount at a time. If you're in a cold climate, it might be helpful to heat your jar a little bit, but here the jar is already up in the 30s just by being in the kitchen. So that vinegar, as it goes in, that can catch your breath a little bit. And just pouring it slowly. If we pour it all too suddenly, then again, if it's very hot, we can crack the jar. In terms of the sugar, some people like to add white sugar. That way the vinegar is a little clearer. This one gives it a little bit of a browner color, which not everybody likes. And there we are. So these are essentially the ones on the top are floating there at the moment. So we can push that down and we leave that to cool.